So let's talk about dry aging versus wet aging. So I started this experiment a month ago. I took 2 strip loins that were pretty close to the same weight from the same box. I took one out of the backpack bag, or the cryo backpack, and I left one in it, and I popped them both in my dry ager at the same time. So they've had 30 days since that time, and we want to see the difference. What we're looking for is the difference in texture, the difference in flavour, and the loss. How much loss did we get? So these are both ebony black Angus marble scored 2 sirloins, so an excellent eating steak. Perfect steak to eat as like a 300 gram steak on the barbecue. First of all, let's weigh them and see what they've come in at and how much we've lost. So I've already zeroed these scales. Let's see, so this one, I'll just grab my notes. This one in the bag came in at 5.8. I probably rounded that up slightly. And it's bang on, unsurprisingly, it's bang on 5.8 again. So there's quite a bit of purge in the bag, what we call purge. So purge is all this in the bag here. So we'll open this in a second and I'll weigh it again just to see what the actual meat's weighing. Time to weigh the dry aged one. Whoa, it's a 5.3. So this weighed 4.3, and this weighed 5.3 when we started. So we lost a kilo in weight in 30 days, so like 20%. So when you go to a restaurant and eat a dry aged steak, that's a lot of the reason why it's so expensive. They just lost a kilo in 30 days. Anyway, let's get this cryovac one out of the bag and see what that weighs. Smells good, that's for sure. Now, we're obviously going to lose a lot more on this dry aged one as well when we start carving it, because we're going to need to take all that outside off. And I will trim these up as if I was going to trim a sirloin for restaurant service. So here, this whole part here we call the chain. So, well, I call it the chain. I don't know if that's the correct term or not, but that's what I was taught it was to be called. So that'll come off. A lot of this fat here, and a little bit of the silver skin will come off. A lot of that side there will come off, and a bit of the top fat will probably trim off, although this is a pretty nice amount of fat on this one, so I don't know how much of that will trim off, but we'll weigh this now, and then we'll go into the boning room and we'll trim these up so that they're ready to be portioned. We'll weigh them again, and then we'll cut a couple of steaks off them, we'll grill them up, and we'll see what the flavour's like. Whoa, so 5.5. So, 300 odd grams of purge in that bag. So 300 grams, that's a portion. That's a whole steak, right? All right, let's jump in the boning room, get these cleaned up. We'll weigh them again, and I'll fire the grill on in the meantime, make sure that's raging hot for the time we get back. We'll cook these and see what the flavors are like. I'm pretty fortunate that I've got my own boning room. Sorry if the noise is a bit echoey in here. I am working in effectively a fridge. So with dry aged meat, you can hear how hard that is. So we actually need to take off all this exterior to get to the nice flesh. Start here, that chain area. Now, one of my followers was saying, and I've had a couple of people saying, you can actually mince this stuff, the trim, mix it with raw beef and make some really good dry aged burgers from it as well. So now the reason I'm going at it pretty aggressively at this end is it's a pretty large piece of fat at the end there, probably too large. So I've trimmed all that off. Now we're going to start working on this underside. And the dry aged meat has a smell about it. It definitely smells different to fresh meat, obviously. And I wouldn't say it's bad. It smells a bit like salami, unsurprisingly. But you can see that once you get past that outside edge, the meat's lovely and red. So the benefits of dry aging, which is a question I get a lot, is the enzymes in the meat, and in any aging, the enzymes in the meat make it more tender. Now, I don't know the scientific reason why that happens. I can't tell you, sorry. But you can see that I'm having to take a fair amount off here, which, you know, in this scenario is not such an issue, but if you're running a restaurant, you've got to charge the customer for that. So that's the bottom side pretty much done. Probably wouldn't take this much fat off if it wasn't dry aged, but the fat's sort of a bit discolored when it gets dry aged and a little bit funky, so nice thin layer off. I'm going to call that about done. So let's weigh this and see with what we've ended up with the final weight. So 2.7 kilos, right? So we started at 5.3, went down to 4.3, and now I've trimmed it further to 2.7. Now, so pretty drastic, right? Let's cut some steaks. So I'm cutting sort of, not huge steaks, what are they? Yeah, 200 grammers, but they've got a good bit of thickness to them, so they'll cook nicely. And when the meat's going to be pretty intense, so you kind of don't want Goliath. Pretty impressive. I mean, these are only scored at a marble score 2+, but it's not bad, right? Like it's, you know, there's certainly a bit of marbling in there. That's a nice steak. These end bits of the sirloins often get a bad rap because there's a piece of sinew that runs right through the center here, but I'm a pretty big fan of this piece. I think it's pretty tasty. There's all these crow's feet. You know, the marbling's usually a bit higher. All right, so what do we get from that? 2, 4, 6, 8, 10, 12 steaks. So we started with 5.3 kilos. We ended up with 12 200 gram steaks. So if anyone's wondering why I get to do all this incredible stuff, so I work here at Kilcoy Global Foods. So we're a meat, lamb and goat processor. And I'm the executive chef for the company. So this is my job. You know, I run this, you know, test kitchen, and I run a bunch of experiments and you know, new product development on sous vide lines. And the dry aging stuff's probably a bit more of a hobby than anything. You know, I kind of really enjoy it. So, and I like to document it and share it with you guys. On to the bag aged one. Prepping a sirloin. Like I was saying, we're going to take this chain off here. So you can just start at one end and you can see it just actually pulls away anyway. So just give it a yank, it'll come away. And then you might need to help it through a little bit, but not too much. And it's a much different butchering experience this. You can just tell straight away, you know, there's far less play when butchering a dry aged piece of meat to this. And you can just tell you're gonna have to trim this up a lot less. So all you're worrying about here is getting rid of the silver skin, really. So this stuff here that you want to get rid of, just to make the eating experience a bit better. And then there's another big piece here that we're going to cut away. You can see that just comes apart. So if you're, I mean, honestly, if I was butchering this at home, I'd probably just leave that on there. But if you're in a restaurant, or you know, that piece there was fat. Like, that's all that was. I'm a big fan of, you know, a bit of fat in your steak, but at a certain point it just gets a bit much. So if you're looking to start breaking down some pieces of meat at home, a sirloin is a good way to start. You know, they're pretty easy to break down. There's nothing kind of too complicated about it. There's obviously, it's not on a bone or anything anyway, so that's kind of makes it easier. Just make sure you got a sharp knife. Take your time and use your common sense. It's pretty much the only advice I've got. Just gonna trim a bit of this off, but not a great deal. All right, trimmed, dressed, ready to go. That wasn't zeroed. 3.6, so we started with that one at 5.8. Stayed at 5.8 and went all the way down to 3.6. Nice sirloin, this one, really nice. So yes, you lose more weight in a dry aged steak, but I reckon you can eat less anyway. it being so rich. This one's a beautiful marble score too. Really nice. All right, so 2, 4, 6, 8, 10, 12, 13. So I got 13 steaks, but bear in mind they're a bit bigger. These are 300 grammers. So take from that what you want. All right, we're gonna choose this guy right here. He looks lovely. You're gonna be mine. And we chose this guy. These are the 2 steaks we'll cook right now. All right, here we go, steaks. So bag aged, dry aged. So we are gonna keep this simple. Now, I get really annoyed when people go, I'm gonna keep the steak simple and then cover it in garlic powder. Like seriously, stop covering your steaks in garlic powder. If you've got good beef, especially dry aged beef, you don't need, doesn't always need to have garlic powder on it. Anyway, rant over. Salt, that's it, just salt. Not dry brining it, not letting it, you know, it's not at room temp. We're just gonna grill it. Let's go. Time to let these rest before we cut them open and have a taste. All right, let's eat some steak. So here's the bag aged sirloin and the dry aged sirloin. Both cooked pretty nicely. Let's try the bag aged first. That's a delicious steak. Super tender, like literally melt in the mouth, you know, and doesn't taste aged, if that's a thing. Definitely doesn't taste funky at all. It just tastes like a really nice, clean grilled steak. All right, dry aged. It has actually cooked a bit further than the other one, which is interesting because it was thicker. So I guess the less moisture in it means it's cooking faster. And it's delicious. It's just as tender, and it's got a slightly stronger flavor, but not by much, you know? To the point where, you know, is it worth dry aging at 30 days? You know, there's not a great flavor difference in here. There's a mild flavor difference, don't get me wrong, but it's not a huge flavor difference. And remember, we lost 20%. Like, you know, it's a lot of volume to lose. And the bag stuff, just as tender. Arguably slightly moister too. But is that because I overcooked this one a bit? Because it cooked faster? Look, don't get me wrong, there's nothing wrong with both of them. But I think if you want to eat dry aged meat, you probably need to take it further than 30 days. You're not going to lose much more moisture. You're certainly, you know, I think you're going to lose the most amount of moisture in the first 30 days. So, how lucky am I? So, my conclusion, is dry aging worth it for 30 days? Honestly, if I was running a restaurant, probably not. I don't think it's worth the amount of waste that you get from it. I think the steaks start coming into their own when you go to that 45, 60 day age stuff. They really start taking on some different characteristics, which is worthwhile doing. But also don't forget, it's a bit of an acquired taste. Some people don't like it. I love it, but I know a lot of people, and people that work in the beef industry, that are not a fan of it. So the 30-day dry aged, in my opinion, probably not worth it. In this scenario, or if you're at home, definitely give it a go. But in a restaurant, you're there to make money at the end of the day. So just leave it in the bag. It's gonna get tender, it's easy to handle. Anyway guys, thanks for watching this one. Tune in again Wednesday, back to my normal kind of recipe stuff, but I thought I'd just chuck this up anyway, as I thought it was kind of interesting and there's been a lot of questions about it. Peace.